Okay, we're ready to go. Hi everyone, can you hear me? Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Melissa and I'm with the Hercules team. We appreciate you being here. Tonight you're going to hear from Chris Paul, CEO, and Chris Longton, Vice President of Exploration. Before we get started though, I want to give you a reminder. Pizza and drinks, as you've already seen, please eat to your heart's desire. We also have a raffle going for that grill you saw back there, so stop by and get your raffle ticket. We will be doing that after the Q&A later this evening. So to kick us off and to hear the latest and greatest from the Hercules team, I'm going to hand it over to Chris and Chris. Thank you.
How's the mic working? Okay, that sounds a bit better. Yeah, so first off, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your evening to come down here and learn a bit more about the project and get an update on things. Get a lot of feedback here. Try standing over here. I'm sure some of you were. It's gonna drive me nuts.
I'll just project.
Yeah.
I can just talk really loud. It's up to you.
Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you guys were here back in December when we did the last one, but I'm sure there's a lot of new faces as well. So I figured I'd give sort of a brief history of the project for those of you that aren't familiar with it, and kind of how we got to where we're at now, and then I'll pass it off to Chris. He's got a presentation prepared. We'll try and keep it relatively brief because I'm sure there's a question and answer period is going to be pretty long in this one. So, historically, this was always a silver district going back to 1870s, and for about 50 years, from 1870 through to about 1920, this was actually a pretty active silver mining district. They're kind of going after really high grade. Easy low-hanging fruit, as we call it, these pockets of high-grade silver that were sort of all over the place over about a 40-mile belt. And, that kind of died down, in the sort of early 1900s, these deposits got mined out and, there just wasn't much left then. And so in 1920 that fizzled, and in 65, an exploration company, which, was sort of our predecessor company, came in here and they signed what's called an option agreement. So they signed a deal with a ranch called Nixon Ranch, and basically the deal was a bunch of cash payments, and they'd commit to do a whole bunch of exploration, and they would earn the mineral rights that the ranch owned and the right to use the surface to do exploration and drilling. And so, for about 20 years from 1965 through to 1984, that company drilled about 308 holes. And, things were kind of steady Eddie moving along, but really sort of took off in 1980, because what happened was the silver price really took off in about, late 1979, early 1980, and, the company raised a whole bunch of money, got very excited, and things were moving along real quickly, and they actually drilled about half their holes. They drilled about 150 of their holes in the early 80s. And then, unfortunately for them, the silver price just came apart. It just crashed, and their dreams of building a silver mine just didn't work when silver price crashed down to about $4, and it stayed there for a very long time. It really didn't recover until sort of the late 2000s, and by then, all the historical operators, they sort of left, and the project had really been orphaned, had been forgotten about. So. We learned about it in 2020 and essentially picked up the project. We bought the project in 2021 with the idea that we wanted to come. Silver price is much better. I'm sure you guys have seen all metal prices have been doing really well lately with all the chaos that's happening in the world and all the inflation and everything that's going on. Gold and silver have been moving up, and so we picked this up. For that reason, but also for the fact that no one had been here in 40 years, and we wanted to use modern technology. A lot has changed, right, technologically speaking, and we can look a lot deeper now than they were able to look back then. And really the key difference that we did that they weren't able to do back then is we did a type of geophysical survey called IP, induced polarization, where essentially we inject a deep current into the ground, and really it's just kind of like a big metal detector. And they had this technology back then, but really you could only see down a few hundred feet, and we were able to look down more like 3,000 feet. And that survey picked up a really, really interesting anomaly at depth. And so last year, we came out, we did our first maiden drill program, and by the time we got to the 5th hole, we decided it was time to find out what this mysterious anomaly was at depth, because it didn't make sense geologically. For all we knew, and all the 40 years of mapping and exploration that happened here, there was no reason to believe there was anything other than this rhyolite rock, which hosts all the silver, and maybe more silver down there. But we wanted to know what it was, and so we plunked this deep hole down, and that ended up hitting a very long intercept of very high-grade copper, and was a complete and utter amazing surprise for us. And that's what sparked all the mania that we saw last fall, and all through the winter, with all the other companies coming in and staking claims, and picking up more land. And obviously a lot has changed, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot of questions about what's developed since the last town hall in December. But for now, I'll pass it off to our Vice President of Exploration, Chris Longton, to show you the presentations put together.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. We can. You may have noticed there's a difference on the slide from what you've seen before. We have historically been Hercules Silver Corporation. We are now officially Hercules Metals, and we just put that release out. And yeah, we just put that news release out that we've changed our name because we are no longer just looking for silver. We are looking for copper as well, and who knows what else is down there. We just hedged our bets and called ourselves Metals. You want to skip ahead there?
Yep.
All right, and that's us. You know us. All right, I want to talk about the history. So the first few slides I put together were some of the same slides I had in December. I wanted this on there. For one, I'd like to reinforce a little bit about what we told you in December, but also for any new folks that weren't out here then, I'd like people to see. This is a collection of materials about the historic mining that I got from your amazing Cambridge Museum, and I recommend everybody spend time and support that museum because the folks there are amazing. I got one of the best days I had all last year sitting in that museum, and Thel had a stack of folders for me to go through, and it was amazing. I got to go through all this stuff, and I learned so much about the history of the area, and it was wonderful. But I'll talk about that history a little bit. So as Chris said, this was a historic mining district for a long time. So in 1864, as when silver was discovered, it was two fellows named Ruth and Heath. And you may have heard of the town Heath, which is where the Fish and Game Office is. And Ruth founded a town called Ruthton. They were both very creative people. But Ruthton isn't around anymore. But the mining district was organized in 1875 through 1920. George Hurst, who some people would know as the grandfather of Patty, or the father of William Randolph, or they would know him as the mining magnate from the 1800s. But either way, he was a very important mining baron, and he bought the Belmont mine. I'm going to talk about the Belmont mine here shortly. In 1920, the Bunker Hill and Sullivan took over. The processing costs were a little bit expensive. They didn't do too much, and then Chris talked about the 1965 silver discovery at the Hercules adit, and how nothing really happened mining-wise. There were a few folks that were doing some work up there after 1984, but no significant exploration activity. And then this is one of my favorite slides, and I know everybody that was here in December saw this one before. I slipped this into as many presentations as I can. That is the Great Seal of the state of Idaho. It is the only state seal designed by a woman. Her name was Emma Edwards Green. She was a Boise artist. She was a suffragist. She believed in equality. That's why you'll notice the male and female figures are of equal stature and prominence on the state seal. But also you'll notice that agriculture and mining are both represented in sort of equal proportions on the state seal, because this is the gem state. It is the gem state. Mining was part of the foundation of this state. It's part of where we come from here. And in the middle of the state seal, there are some buildings. You can see those highlighted there on the right. Those were the stamp mill for the Belmont mine that George Hearst had built. So part of your history from this community is right there on the state seal in perpetuity. I love that. All right, so let's talk about the life cycle of the modern mine. I've heard everything from 300 miners coming out here this year to 800 miners to 1,000 miners coming out here this year, and that is fine. And hopefully we dispelled a lot of those myths back in December. But I've heard that it still propagates, and people talk about that a bit. So I'd like to talk about what actually goes into mining and how we get from where we are, which is exploration, to the end, which is reclamation. So we're exploring. That takes a lot of different methods. You know, we are, like Chris said, we use geophysics. We do mapping. We do drilling. The drill holes are about this big. You see the drill core back there. That's how big the hole is that we put in the ground. We do all of this stuff to try to find something. And once we found it, it doesn't mean that it's a mine, right? We found something. And then we have to develop that, and we have to find more. It's really expensive to build a mine, right? We don't just go in, you know, with mules and dynamite like they did in the old days and just, you know, not care about it. We have to follow all the environmental regulations. We've got to follow all of the air quality and water quality and everything that has to be done. Plus, we have to design the mine in a way that maximizes profit. It's incredibly expensive to do. We have to, in this stage, make sure that we find enough resources to make all of the rest of it make sense. This takes years. This is where we are. We are in the discovery phase right now. And we're one of the very few very lucky junior mining companies, or junior exploring companies, to have found something last year. And from here, after years, then the mine design takes place. And that mine design involves everything, and that's community relations, and that's the construction people, and that's the engineers, and that's everybody involved in actually figuring this out. And while they're starting this phase, they're thinking about this phase. We don't start the mine design without thinking about the end of the mine. This isn't how it used to be in mining. And it's because of a bad legacy in mining that I've got to come up here and say this to everybody, right? But I'm glad that I'm able to do it. We start thinking about reclamation. For reclamation, we have to post a bond. Now, I've heard rumors, unfortunately, that we don't have to put up money for bonds and that we could put up stock or whatever. No, we have to. Mining companies, to develop a mine, have to. What they do is they use like an assurance company that's like an insurance company essentially, where they'll put up the money and the mine pays into it. The miners don't get to see that. If they have a rough year, they don't get to go, well, we're just going to tap into the reclamation budget. You can't do that, right? So that's being considered during the mine design plan. And then construction. Construction is just building. That's when people come into a community. Big if we get out of this phase, we may not. If we do, if we find enough to make the rest of it make sense, the people that move in are generally in the construction phase. And those folks that come in, yeah, it takes as many hundreds of people as it takes to do it. They aren't going to flood the city necessarily, or the whole community. They'll generally set up a camp someplace. They'll buy some property, set up a man camp, and then in general the construction crews tend to stay roughly there when they have to hire outside folks. But I'll tell you right now, every company that I've ever been with does everything they can to hire as many local people as they can. Why? It makes sense, right? And here it makes a lot of sense. We've got a big community between Weiser and Cambridge and Midvale and Council and out to Halfway. That's all absolutely drivable to where our site is. So that's the construction phase, and then production. Production lasts as long as the mineralization holds out, right? If there's stuff in the ground, that's there until it's all gone, economically. And then the closure. And the mine has to close down, and you have to have a plan for all of this, all along the way. And you can't just go in and go, well, all right, we got everything out of there, we're out of here. It's a plan of phased stepping away from the mine, and then reclamation. And the reclamation is getting it back into a state that's as useful as possible. And that starts at the beginning. So, from here to here, this is the phase that we focus on in our industry. And to get from there to there, if you go to the next one, it averages in the States 13 years. It's a 13-year permitting process. And some people are like, oh, that's too long. Some people say, oh, that's not long enough. It's good to have a long permitting process, because this way we can make sure that we aren't destroying the environment too bad. We're not doing anything that's going to be deleterious or have long-lasting effects. All of that stuff. To get there, and I didn't go over all of the NEPA processes. I went over that in December. But if anyone wants me to talk about it, I gladly will. But that takes 13 years in the States. And it isn't an overnight process. It isn't next year there's going to be 1,000 people moving in here clamoring for resources. All right, so what's new? This is the new stuff. This is different than what I talked about back in December. What's new in 2024? We bought a house. We're your neighbors now. We bought a house on Cemetery Road. We are trying to be good neighbors. We had a noise complaint early on, and we had a Corsaw outside making noise. So what did we do? We heard the complaint. We said, all right, noted. We moved that saw inside a building. We put an exhaust fan on it. We insulated the building, and we heard from the gentleman who had a concern that he doesn't hear the saw anymore. And we had concerns about driving on the roads, and that some people were taking turns too wide and things like that. We sat down with every person in the company, every contractor, every person working for us, and we said, do not drive crazy on this road. And the person that was concerned about it came by the house and let us know that things were much better now, and that we are good. We're trying to be good neighbors, right? We expanded our team. We have a bit more going on this year, so we've about doubled the team. I'm going to talk about who we've hired here in a bit. We've gotten a bit more involved in the local community, and we started drilling. We began drilling in April, which was a little bit ahead of schedule for us, which we were very happy about. And then we expanded our claims on site, and I think everybody here probably knows that there were lots of claim staking that went on over the winter, and we expanded our claims a bit. It doesn't mean that we own all of the land, it's just we're staking claims to do mineral exploration. Okay, so what are we doing? We're soil sampling. Soil sampling involves sampling the soil. I know it sounds shocking, but we'll dig a small hole that's about this deep, scoop a little bit of material out of the bottom, fill the hole back in when we're done. All right, we don't leave tags, we don't leave anything for cattle to trip in, we don't leave holes up there, and we sample what was in the ground. And we can learn a lot if we take a lot of those samples. We might do some geophysics this year. It's definitely not been ruled out yet. That's what we did last year. And that's how we were able to find the discovery there. Field mapping. This is one of the most important things that we do. We have actually one of our field mappers in the crowd right now, but it's going out and breaking rocks with a hammer and looking at them under a hand lens and describing what they are, right? The rocks actually tell fascinating stories if you give them a chance. And we've got crews that go out and make field maps. And then we do drilling. And drilling is the thing that I think a lot of people have questions about sometimes. It's things people have talked to me about probably the most. And I can talk about drilling here. The drilling is not this. This is a drill. I had this slide in the last one. I'm having it up again because I have to reinforce this. This is an oil rig. A lot of people think that when we're drilling holes in the ground, we're setting up this. This is a city. People live here. they live here, they eat here, they work here. That's not what we are. That's not what we're doing. If you move on, I'll show you the rigs that we use. This is the size rig that we're using. I chose this picture in particular. This was one I used in the last presentation. In the next slide, you'll understand why I chose this. I'm not quite there yet. Oh, buried the lead. Okay, sorry. But it's 3 people work on these rigs, right? And it's a small drill. You could fit a number of them in here. They set up on a pad. We try to keep the drill pads as small as we possibly can. And then when we're done drilling, we go to the next slide. And this is what that site looks like right now. I've driven a number of people past this, and most people don't even realize there was ever a drill there. Actually, if you go back for a second, see this tree right here? And then go to the next one. That's that tree right there. Now, I'm just a geologist, right? I look at rocks for a living. Plants, to me, I go, oh, there's just a bunch of plants. That's great. They went in there. We brought some of the experts through, though, and they said, oh, you know what? We appreciate that you guys did the reclamation, but some of the plants that have taken are weeds, right? Or they're not beneficial plants, or whatever. And because of that conversation, now we're able to do an even better job of trying to find ways to make sure that our seed mix is appropriate, so that when we do the reclamation, we've got a higher likelihood of having beneficial seeds take over there. We're looking at ways that we can do weed management up there on these sites to keep the things we don't want. We don't want the whitetop, right? We want the native grasses. We want the good stuff, the bee plants. This is the stuff that we want up there. And so I love this slide because it shows me that the reclamation works. But I also love this slide because I learned something. And I learned that we can be better at how we're managing the land. So we're working on that a lot. We're putting a lot of effort into our environmental work. One of the things we're doing, we brought in, we brought in these untreated red fir timbers to put across all the water crossings. We didn't have to do this. We had the rights to just drive over it. But by driving over it, we muddy up the creek. Last year, we tried putting down some felt with some corduroy and hoped that that would do it, and it didn't really do a great job. So this year we said, well, you know what, forget it. We're going to go over the top of it. And we're going to set these up. Keep going. This is what it looks like when it's all done. This is one of our water crossings. We had a pump right here that we are drawing some water off of for the drilling. And as we go over it, the water flows freely. It doesn't touch the wood at all. We go right over it. We aren't muddying up any of the creeks. Now, as far as that pump goes, we've got it fully wrapped for containment to make sure that we aren't getting anything into the water from there. We're also, we are permitted to use some water, but we can't allow the water level to get too low. So we've taken mitigation methods with that. So we have some water tanks up the hill so we can draw water slowly without being a burden on the creek. And we can reserve the water so that if it gets a little dry, we can tap into that and use that. We're trying to go above and beyond. These are things we don't have to do. But the things that we've done, we reclaimed every site that we used in 2022 and 2023. We're continuing our seed and weed management programs. We're working with our regulators to try to make sure that we've got the best methods for weed management, and we're learning all sorts of things about the time of year to spray and what to spray for and how to do it. I've learned more about that than I ever thought I would. The seeding as well, we're trying to come up with the best ways to do that, to make sure that the seeds take. We want to have a good environment for the animals that are living up there. We hired a new environmental technician. This is someone who I've worked with before, who is excellent at her job. And she's helped us update our best management protocols to make sure that if we're doing work in proximity to a stream or a creek, that we are digging our sumps to an appropriate level so that we're able to contain everything that comes out of there. That we have good inspection protocols to make sure that we don't have any spills or drifts to make sure that there's proper containment under every piece of equipment that uses oil. We also have our stormwater pollution prevention plan, and it's a public document that's actually on the gate by our property. And it lists all of our protocols. If there's a storm event, we check all sorts of spots to make sure that we don't have sediment running into any of the creeks or streams. And we've been updating the infrastructure, so these bridges are part of it. We also updated the road up there on Camp and Great Creeks. All right, last time I did not have a slide about our local impacts on the community because I wanted to hear from the folks in the community on how you wanted to interact with us. And we got a lot of great feedback back in December. But now I'd like to tell you some of the things we are doing, right? We've pumped tens of thousands of dollars into local businesses. That's food, that's fuel. We had to get a bunch of signs for up the hill. We had those made locally. Automotive, we got a truck, anything we need done, and it needs a lot done. It was an inexpensive truck, and we're getting everything done locally. We had construction services. We bought the house. We had to update the electrical. We've had to do some plumbing work out there. But we also needed a bunch of gravel for doing the road work up the hill. Any supplies that we need. We go to the co-op and Cambridge Lumber and General Store first. And if we can't find what we need here in Cambridge, then we go out. But the mandate that we've given everybody on the team is get your stuff here first, right? Giving back. So we have made donations to 26 local organizations at varying amounts. And there's 3 more coming, I think. So we'll leave that at that. But I think we're trying to do some good in the community. But hiring local. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Everybody wants to know about jobs. And I wish I could hire everybody who wants to be hired. We have a small team. We have 27 people, and that's including Chris, who's based in Canada most of the time.
Only 2 Canadians.
We only have 2 Canadians. But all of our 27 people that are regularly here on site, and there's a couple of folks that do work for us in Canada that are finance people and things like that. But of the people here, of the 27, 15 are local. 10 are full-time, 5 are part-time. They've all been amazing so far. We've got a great experience with the workers that we have. But if you look at our geologists, our technical staff, and I know sometimes it seems like the rest of Idaho it might be a different world because it feels that way sometimes. But 3 of our geologists are local, or they're Idaho geologists. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the educational opportunities and things like that. So if we move on from there. You know, I was at the county commissioners meeting recently, and there was a gentleman talking, and there were questions about schools, and what if mines come in, and what do they do with the schools? And I can't speak for every company, and I can't speak for every jurisdiction. What I can say is exploration, mineral exploration, mining, production in this state, geological and engineering jobs are going to be more common. Perpetua is likely to go into production at some point. Delamar is likely to go back into production here pretty soon. Black pine is likely to go into production pretty soon. And hopefully Hercules will at some point, all right? To make sure your students have, your kids have the best opportunities to do that. You know, you can go work in one of these environments and you've got a high school diploma, and that's great. And you can drive a haul truck, and that's terrific. Driving a haul truck's fun, you know? I think it's really great. But the College of Western Idaho is putting together a mining technician program. It's a 15-week course where at the end of it, people will have learned some basics of geology, different extraction methods. They'll learn some of the basics to the software that we use. They'll learn a little bit about permitting, and they'll get an MSHA certification. If anyone doesn't know what MSHA is, I assume everyone knows what OSHA is. MSHA is a much stricter version of OSHA. It came about in 1977 because there had been a horrible mine disaster. And we didn't want to have that anymore. We went from having, you know, dozens to hundreds of dead miners in America every year to now, if it gets to double digits ever, it's a shocking thing, and it's a staggering bad year. Regulations, but we've got to go through 24 hours of training to learn all of the ins and outs about safety and environmental with MSHA. And your students would go through and they would get a certification that'll set them up and have them advance for jobs. If your student is a college-minded student, the University of Idaho is a land-grant university. Their mandate is to get people into jobs. That's what a land-grant university is for. You're not sending your kid to the University of Idaho to get an underwater basket weaving degree. All right, and then have them come move back into your basement for forever and play video games. You're sending them there, and they're getting trained. The geology department there has taken such a focus on getting people ready for industry jobs. And they've got permitting classes, and they've got the geology classes, and they've got the software classes that we use in industry. And if you've got a student who's looking for a career, the University of Idaho is doing great things there. Idaho State has amazing field programs. And some of the best field geologists I've worked with in the state have come out of that university. And Boise State University has an amazing academic programs. So if you have a student who, look, I don't have a PhD or anything. If you have a student who's really excelling, send them there and have them go into the academics. But there are jobs out there, and there's educational opportunities at all levels to get people ready for the jobs that are coming to this state, be it here or elsewhere. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about those jobs, you know, one of the things that I'm really, really happy about, our drilling company hired a local driller. And it was a local fella who went off to Nevada to get a job because that's where he was able to get work. And he applied with the drilling company, and they gave him a shot. And he's doing a great job. And he's here, and he's home every night. So I'm really happy about that. His sister told me that she sees him more in the last month than she's seen him for years. And I don't think it could be better. And there's a lot of local sons and daughters that have had to move away to take jobs that if something was to come here, they would be able to come home. And I don't know, I don't think there's anything better than that. All right, let's just talk about some of the things we've done. Let's see. Yeah, we drilled 35 drill holes in the last couple of years. We did a lot of soil sampling. We did those IP surveys. We did a drone magnetometry survey. We flew a drone over to see if the ground was magnetic, and we learned a few things from it. We did work on permitting. We are constantly working on permitting. Some of our regulators are here. They are sick of this face and this voice because they are getting a lot of it. We purchased the mineral property a little south of here. Then, of course, the big news was the non-broker private placement with Barrick Gold. They saw the discovery that we made last year and saw that it was worth investing in. And then, yeah, we bought a house in Cambridge. So, and what have we got coming up? All right, this is what we're doing. It's a big question, what we're up to and what we have on the go. We slightly expanded the drilling program. So last year we ended the program with 3 drills. We started with 1, we had a second, then a third. This year we started with 3. We didn't really bring more drilling companies and drilling stuff in. We expanded our team at the house about double. We did the Great Creek and Camp Creek Road improvements. We're working on permitting. Always working on permitting. Again, they're sick of me. We've expanded our mineral claims up there a bit. We did an additional soil sampling program and doing some sampling and mapping up at site and the mineral property. It really is kind of business as usual. It isn't much different than what we did last year. It's just a slightly bigger scope, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. We're just trying to find more, and we're here for your questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes?
In your brochure here, you say that our team is utilizing modern and environmentally sound techniques. According to whom? Like, who has judged your your techniques to be modern and environmentally sound?
Well,
Where on the internet can I go look this information up and it says Hercules Silver Corporation uses modern and environmentally sound techniques?
certainly. Well, the question was about how we are able to make the claim that our techniques that we use are modern and environmentally sound. We have strict oversight with regulators for our environmental quality and assurance. So we are beholden to other people for what we do, right? We make sure that we use no chemicals that go into our drilling as anything other than inert clays and food-grade linseed oil, right? You could cook your eggs with it. I wouldn't, but you could. The sampling that we do is not invasive. We bring out our regulators on a regular basis to ensure that we are following our environmental protocols that have been set by them. As far as our modern methods, we use modern geophysical methods. We use modern drilling techniques. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? I turned it off.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, nothing really to add to it. Obviously, we made the promotional flyer, so it's a self-proclaimed statement. But, you know, at the end of the day, mining used to be a lot worse than it is today, right? Guys used to show up, companies would show up, make a huge mess, dig a big hole in the ground, and then they just leave. There was no reclamation, right? They just didn't care. Like, things didn't matter back then. All we're really trying to say is we're not using any harmful chemicals, and we clean up after ourselves, and we just try and leave the ground, you know, try and leave the land the way it looked before we showed up to the best of our abilities. Yes, sir. Gordon.
Who would be your environmental regulators?
So we've got a few different agencies on which the mineral rights that we have are sitting. So we've got a 20-acre parcel of BLM land. So BLM kind of administers the mineral rights on all federal land, so whether that's BLM or Forest Service. But we've got a lot of claims on the Forest Service as well, so they would be the environmental regulator for any surface disturbance on that ground, of course. IDL also regulates anything that happens on state land. And Idaho Department of Water Resources is going to basically permit you to draw water that you're going to need for your drilling. And the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, is going to allow you to discharge that drilling water, that inert drilling water with just cuttings, rock cuttings in it, into a sump where it can settle, percolate back into the ground, and not run off over the land.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes?
Well, I have a little bit of concern about the using of the water. You know, we have water rights for stock water and for crop irrigation, and we usually run out before the summer's over. And so if you guys are starting to surf on the forest and come through all of our private ground using water, how does that trump our water rights?
Yeah, so we're using a very, very small amount of water.
What was the question?
Oh, my bad, sorry. The question is around water rights and if our, what is happening? If our water rights trump essentially your water rights, is that kind of the question? Well, they don't. We draw a very small amount of water for the drilling operations, and we get that permitted through Idaho Department of Water Resources. So basically the small amount of water that we need to use to pump down the hole to cool the drilling bit, we draw from very small creeks. And, you know, of course we can't draw an amount that's going to significantly affect any of the creek flows in the area. So I guess the short answer is it's a very small amount of water that's not really going to affect anyone's. But I'll pass this one off to Chris as well.
So one of the things that we do as well with the water is at the site, at the drill rigs, we have a little centrifuge. It's called a solids recovery unit. And any water that we do use actually gets recycled back into that. It spins out any solid particulate and separates that to put into the sump. And then we take that water that we drew originally and we recycle that. We reuse that same water as much as we can. And that limits the amount that we have to draw. But we're held to regulations by Idaho Department of Water Rights, and they've set the standard for how much we can draw and how much we can draw down the creeks. So we had to submit to them a permit application with our water draw locations that they had to approve with the stipulation that we won't let the water flow go under a certain amount. And yeah, I don't know. We're trying to be as conscious as we can with that. We know the water is a delicate issue, and our drilling operations use a very small amount of water, and it's when we're able to have the drilling muds that we use are clays. They're inert clays, but we line the drill hole with it as we're drilling. And that helps keep that water recirculating and recycling all the way up through so that we can keep reusing that same water without having to have a huge draw. The creek that you saw there that I had the bridge over, that's a trickle that just comes down, and that supplied a drill for a 1,500-foot drill hole. And the water level never went down in an appreciable way. So the concern, I think, is with we got our permit from IDWR, and so we apply just like everybody else does.
Yeah, we don't take any groundwater, and we only pump for a few hours a day to fill a tank, which then we can recycle. So it's a very small.
What creek was that?
I don't know if it's even a named
It's
creek.
not even a named creek. These are just little 1 foot, 2 foot wide, unnamed.
It's a tributary that leads eventually into Creek. The question was what the name of the creek was. It's a tributary that ultimately leads into Camp Creek.
Camp Creek.
It isn't Camp Creek. It's a tributary that a few stages down we'll get to Camp Creek.
When you enter production, will your water use increase, and how much?
Well, that is an amazing question, and that would presuppose that we're going into production. I mean, that is so far off. We're still in the exploration stage. You know, in order to go into production, there are water uses, but that's part of that 13-year process, is assessing how much water they can take without having a huge impact on the community. And sometimes, you know, I worked at one mine where we had to drill our own wells that were considerably deeper than anyone else's wells. So
is it a water-intensive process for production?
It can be. It depends on the style of mining.
What style of mining will you do, or do you have any idea?
We have,
open pit? What are you going to do?
We have some guesses. It would be underground, most likely. You know, the method is going to be in the drill planning stage, but it's pretty deep, the mineralization that we found. So going underground would be the only thing that would make sense. The method, that's for an engineer to decide, but possibly block caving, which is a method where you put the infrastructure in first and you draw the mineralization down. But it's possible, depending on the style of mineralization, that they could use stoping or some other method.
So on average, you know, it takes about 1,000 feet to hit the top of the mineralization. So to build an open pit would require so much stripping, you know, it's possible, extremely unlikely. These types of copper deposits...
Hard to hear you back here.
I'll try the mic again. So these types of copper deposits, they're big, low-grade deposits, and so underground mining historically was always reserved for sort of narrow, high-grade types of deposits. But, you know, they've come up with, I don't know, I guess in the last maybe 20 years, a method called block caving. And that's for mining, you know, big sort of bulk tonnage, low-grade deposits. And you come in underneath the ore body, you basically drill up into it, you initiate caving of the rock downwards, and you basically draw it out slowly. So it's costs a lot of money to do all the pre-production development and build that, but once it's going, the operating costs are relatively low, so it can work for a relatively low-grade deposit. You know, very, very early days to know. And another point I just want to make, you know, because I'm sure people are going to ask questions that are going to sort of have to do with the fact that, you know, mining, right? And you know, we drilled a really nice hole last year. Our hole 5 was a really, really nice hole, but you know, the reality is we probably need another 100 of those really nice holes before we're looking at a mining scenario, right? And so we're not even thinking about, you know, what type of mine is this going to be, or, you know, how are we going to get our water, right? Like, all of our focus right now is, can we even find something, right? Because, you know, this is a deposit that formed a long time ago, and it's had faulting. You know, it's kind of moved it around. It's sliced it, it's diced it, it's folded it. You know, it's not easy. I mean, all the easy mineral deposits have been found, and this is a deposit that's got 1,000 feet of cover sitting on top of it. So, you know, imagine they drilled 308 holes here, you know, from the 60s to the 80s. They didn't even know it was there, right? There's no sign of it on surface. This was, you know, almost a fluke discovery. So, you know, you're dealing with something that's deep, you can't see it, it's been jostled around by faulting, it's been moved, so we got a lot to figure out there before, I think, you know, we start thinking about mining scenarios and stuff like that. And like Chris said, you know, hopefully in 5, 6, 7 years from now, we'll start to think about this kind of stuff, but for now, we're just crossing our fingers.
Yes?
Yes, I live off Cemetery Road, just past your guys' place there. And just a couple of weeks ago, a bunch of equipment moved up above me 100 yards away from my property and did some exploration along the surface of the neighbor's property. Was that you guys?
Nope.
So
What was the question?
So the question was, there was some exploration work done along one of our neighbors' properties. They're along Cemetery Road, and are we associated with that at all? And we are not. Yep.
My observation, I don't know any information other than my observation. It appears as though they're doing exploration just below the topsoils, and this is right on the outskirts of Cambridge. So I'm very concerned that there may be a future mine here within rock throwing distance of Cambridge. Is that going to be a possibility?
So the question is, well, starts with a statement that there's some exploration activity happening very close to Cambridge, in your neighborhood in Cambridge. You know, is there a possibility that maybe there might be a mine within a stone's throw of the town? I don't think that could. No one will ever let that happen in a million years. We don't know who that is. There's 5 junior companies that we know about that have since showed up since the discovery was announced last year, and have been doing lots of claim staking and kind of doing their own thing. Those are our competitors, and you know, they don't generally tell us what they're doing, so it can be tough, and you know, most of the time we learn about this third hand too. So happy to chat more after this, and you know, kind of maybe get to the bottom of what's going on up there. But I don't think they'll. You know, that's pretty close to town.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to work in a mine in Canada, and it was about 15 minutes outside of a town. There was another deposit that was discovered closer to the town, and the community put their feet down. And they said, we don't want this to be this close to where we are. And that mineralization is still sitting in the ground today. The community has a lot of say over things like that. And if it's going to be
you know, right outside of town, that it could cause a lot of problems for people. So, you know, the companies can't just come in and do whatever they want, right? Contrary to what I think popular belief might be. You know, there are, if there isn't any public will to support it, and the government, local governments aren't supportive of it, then chances are it's going to be really hard for it to happen. You know. Are there any other questions? Hi, yes. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, would we need to be permitted to do anything that we want, that we need to do, correct? Is that your question? Oh, I'm sorry. The question is that we would need a permit to do.
Well, you said the company can do whatever they want.
No, I said we cannot do whatever we want. Companies cannot do whatever we want. I'm gonna leave that thing down for a minute. Yeah, we cannot do whatever we want. Companies cannot go into a community and just do whatever they want. We have to have permits. There's regulations. We have to have, you know, public will supporting the project. And, you know, we are highly, highly regulated. We're probably one of the most regulated industries in the world. And we have to abide by all of the regulations and permits to do anything. We can't drill a hole in the ground this big in some parts, in some of our land claims without extensive permits. And we're working on that now. And we can't do a minor disturbance like we did for our one drill pad to then reclaim it, to have it look green the next year without having approvals and permits. We have to be permitted for every single thing that we do.
That brought up another question that I had where you're drilling. Is there any chance that equipment could start a fire where you are?
That's a great question. So the question was, is there any chance of a fire being started where we are? Technically, is there a chance? Yeah, there is a chance. So we do extensive fire training with everybody on our team. Every vehicle is equipped with fire extinguisher, shovels, buckets, and water pumps. At the drill rigs, they've got a water silo to hold the water that they use for drilling, and that can be turned into a hose to put out any sort of fire in that area. We work very closely with, currently we're working on land that's in partnership with Idaho Fish and Game, and work with the managers of that land to make sure that we're not driving on dead grass, that we aren't going off-road in any way, that if any chains are being pulled on trailers, that we aren't sparking anything. We have someone on our team who's a former firefighter who gave a good training to everybody on our team just the other day at our safety meeting, and it comes up as a regular weekly safety topic in our daily safety meetings about fires and how to deal with them. Today, our drillers called me up and said they saw smoke across the valley on the other side. So they saw smoke and called that in. Right? They didn't cause it, but they were in a good vantage point to spot it. We immediately called Fish and Game and found out that it had already been reported by somebody else, and luckily the firefighters had put it out. Right? But is it possible? It's possible. The good thing is when we're doing our work, you know, we scrape that pad clean, so it's just bare dirt that we sit on. Right?
Well, I got concerned when you said there was water right there. That much water, so I thought, well, just fire that and be back. But
Oh.
thank you, you explained it, that's great.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes.
So there's been over 6,000 mining claims recorded in Washington County so far this year. And you said that you found promise of copper, other, and maybe the other companies don't share this with you, but what's the big draw right now for this amazing explosion in mining claims?
I need this. I don't talk very loud. Copper. So, I mean, the silver's been known about for a long time. Sorry, the question was in relation to the 6,000 mining claims that have been staked over the winter. There might even be more. And you know what the big draw is, like why are there so many mining claims that have suddenly showed up here? And you know, it's the difference maker that drilling a deep hole up at the Hercules property did last year. It went from a very well known about silver thing in the near surface to a new discovery of what's called a copper porphyry. It's a special type of copper deposit that they tend to be large, and they tend to be, you know, they tend to be economic, and they're not little scrappy veins which you can find kind of all over the place. They're continuous and they hang together, and importantly, they tend to occur in clusters, and people know that, geologists know that. So quite often where there's one, you know, there's going to be others in that same belt of geology. So that's what people are doing. They're basically looking at that trend of the rocks, and they're just trying to grab what they can and look for the same thing that we found.
The permits that you're talking about, 6,000, how many of them did Hercules put in?
So the question is, you know, we're talking about 6,000 claims staked in the district. How many do we have? We have about 800.
So that means that there's that many more companies out there than
Yeah. There's 5 other junior companies that we know of out there. Yeah, doing their thing.
I know in December you talked about a company down in Nevada that was kind of curious what you guys were doing. Are they one of them?
So I think the question is about a company in Nevada that's curious about what we're doing. I think you're talking about Barrick Gold Corp, which invested into us after we made the discovery, made an investment into our company, and we're obviously encouraged, you know, at the prospectivity of the district as a whole as well. And so, like the other junior companies that have been staking claims in the district, they've been doing the same thing. So they've made an investment into us, so they're backing us as a company and the Hercules project, and they're also going out and having a look at what else is out there as well.
What makes them junior companies?
So the question is, what makes them junior companies? And really, there's no like threshold line between you're a junior or you're a major. Juniors tend to be the little small cap. In other words, their market capitalization. That's a term we use in the stock market, which just basically means, you know, what their company's worth, what the total value of their company's worth. If it's relatively small, you know, under $1 billion, let's just say, to draw a line, and their primary focus is just exploration, as opposed to when we use the term major, we're typically referring to a company that's a mining company. That's actually, you know, mining companies buy junior exploration companies. So the junior exploration companies will go out in the market and they'll raise, you know, usually only $1 million or a few $1 million to go prospecting. They're you know, junior exploration companies are sort of advanced versions of prospectors, and they go out and they map and they soil sample and they do geophysics and they drill holes, and sometimes they find things. And when they find things, the major, which is mining, that's how they actually generate revenue, they actually make money, and they're depleting their reserves all the time. And so the only way they can grow, you know, when they're depleting their reserves from mining, is to buy juniors. So that's what we mean when we say juniors and majors.
Aren't you hoping to get purchased too? You're not the mining company.
Yeah, so the question is, are we hoping to get purchased? And absolutely, we're hoping to get purchased in the future. Sorry about this, Mike. we're not the mining company. We're not engineers. We're geologists. So we're in the business of looking and hopefully finding. And if we're successful, that's the reward is getting bought. Having our shares that we all own in the company, we're all shareholders of the company, purchased for hopefully a pretty good price by the major. Gordon?
Are there other exploration companies physically on place now?
Sorry, are there other exploration companies
working around here now?
Working around here now. Yes, there are. So the companies that are out there right now, you've got most of them are publicly listed on the stock exchange. So you got a company called Nev Gold. They staked a whole bunch of claims down by, I call it the Mineral District. It's about 14 miles southwest of Hercules. And, they're doing a little bit of work out there. And there's another company called Zeus. That was a crafty name that they came up with, I guess. And they're up to the northeast of us. I know they're doing the same geophysics that we did. So they're basically thinking, well, let's just do the same type of exploration that these guys did, along the same trend, along the same belt of rocks that these guys did. And if we see the same signature that these guys did, then we'll drill some holes too. Another company called Scout, they're doing a lot of work, same thing. And yeah, so all these companies are basically doing the, what we call grassroots level exploration. This is just boots on the ground, mapping, soil sampling, the geophysics. And their hope is maybe in 3 years from now, they'll have collected enough data and they'll be able to, they'll have some targets that are actually, merit drilling. They may not, but if they do, then they'll start their own permitting process for drilling and, get to kind of closer to where we're at.
How deep have you drilled?
How deep do we drill, or how deep can we drill?
Have you drilled?
Have we drilled?
How deep have we drilled? We have drilled to 3,000 feet.
A little over.
A little over. 3,000.
It was over a kilometer, 2,400 feet.
3,400 feet. Again.
How deep have you drilled this year?
How deep have we drilled this year? This year,
close to 2,000.
We have not press released that. So as a public company, you'll have to censor that out. We're not allowed to tell you. So it's, there's obviously sort of privacy rules around public companies and, insider information and things like this, right? And there's a lot of eyes on us right now. And, talking about how deep we may or may not have drilled some holes is, considered information to some people out there. So we'll have to update you on that at a later date.
Somewhere between 0 and a lot.
Yeah, it's a non-zero number. Gordon?
That would be kind of like giving up your fishing hole or your hunting spot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Has your core sampling proved to be good so far this year? What's your sampling been like?
That's even worse.
Yeah,
the question is, how's the core looking?
How's the sampling been going? Well, our core cutters are working diligently, and they are doing an amazing job of taking the samples in the best way they possibly can, with the highest quality control standards.
Yeah.
And I will attest to that.
Can't blame the guy for trying.
You're still here, okay?
Robert.
Now, Chris, so whenever you dug down and you found your target, how deep was that at the top of your target?
So last year, the question is how deep is the top of our target? In other words, how much cover do we have to drill through, how much barren cover, before we get to the mineralization? And the answer, it's variable, but I would say on average, we're talking about 1,000 feet.
And you've drilled 3,000 feet, have you hit the bottom of it?
We have not hit the bottom of
You're
it.
still in it at 3,000.
At 3,000 feet and our deepest hole, we are still in it. We have not found the bottom.
Yes, sir.
Directional drill or just drill straight down?
Oh, can I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just talking with directional drillers recently. So the question is, do we use directional drilling? You can hear me, can't you? I'm in the back.
I'll keep the microphone.
All right, yeah, I'll just have a rough voice in the morning. We do angled drill holes. We don't do what's directional drilling, where we have like the direction. There's a method where you can put a motor on the front and it can guide the drill hole in a certain at a certain point. Those work really well in very, very deep holes, and the gain that we would get would be about 15 degrees. And so if we did a 3,000-foot drill hole and we were able to do directional off at about 2,000 feet, we'd gain about 250 feet distance. And we're really looking for bigger step outs to try to understand the scale, because this is likely to be a very big deposit if it proves out to be what we hope it is. Are there any other questions? Yes?
So, do I understand correctly that you guys are essentially an exploration corporation, and should the deposit be rich enough that a major or another company would buy you and actually do the mine, build the mine, design the mine itself? Am I understanding that correctly?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're always hoping for. No, there's a million options too. You have partners with companies or junior joint ventures, or there's all sorts of different things, but that's the most likely is a bigger company takes you out. Yes?
Why are the junior companies not having information meetings like this, like you're doing?
Well, the question is, why aren't the other junior companies in the area having the same types of informational meetings that we're having? I don't know. I don't work for them. I can't speak for them. Look, we're willing to put ourselves out here in front of the community to answer your questions.
But
right?
They're doing essentially the same thing you're doing.
Yeah, but I'll also say this. We were doing this type of work for 2 years before anybody even really realized that we were out here. And it was when people started asking questions after us, we said, oh, you know what? People are curious. Let's satisfy the curiosity. We'll get in front of them and get to know people.
Yeah. So, all right, I give up too. So quite often, companies like us, they're just doing soil sampling and mapping. They're not typically not bothering anyone, right? They don't. There's probably 2,000 exploration companies just in the U.S. and Canada right now doing exploration, and it's very rare that one of them gets a hole like we got last year, and makes a real true discovery. And so usually once you make a real true discovery, that's when you show up and you say, okay, here's what happened, right? We had a lot of activity in the area. There was a lot of claim staking. There was helicopters flying around. I think people just generally wanted to know what was going on. But I'm gonna talk to some of these groups, right? We kind of know each other a little bit, right? And encourage them to kind of do the same thing that we're doing, because it's quite easy.
Yes, Gordon?
I'll speak for myself and probably likely the rest of the people, but we thank you for coming forward, letting us know what's going on, satisfy the curiosities. Very important to a small area.
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much.
And you're really quick on answering emails and stuff too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank everybody for taking the time to come out. We are available afterwards, so if you had a question that you didn't want to ask in front of everybody, come up to us, and we'll give you our contact information as well. You're more than welcome to reach out to us directly. We do have a barbecue grill to give away, so hopefully people have...
That's the thing, please don't leave yet. Ryan is coming right now, so if you have your red tickets, please pull it out. We're giving away a sweatshirt because these are going to be vintage soon. They're Hercules silver, not metals, but they will be soon metals. We have another sweatshirt and a shirt, and then the grill. So red tickets out. Ryan, take it away.
For those of you that don't know me, I am Ryan Barton. I live here in Midville. I'm one of the part-time guys that they have hired, and I handle all their community stuff. So all the sponsorships and donations that they talked about, that's what I handle. And any other questions or concerns that you have, including the sound system, Justin, we probably need to talk about the next fair board. But other than that, please get a hold of me. I would love to answer the questions, and if I don't know them, I'm going to talk to these guys directly. They're always a phone call away. So, first prize will be a sweatshirt.
227052.
Hey! What did I tell you? You got to yell Yahtzee.
All right. You'll be able to wear that sweatshirt for years.
Yeah. See, it would have been my luck. I would have won a small or something. All right, another sweatshirt and a t-shirt.
Coming up. 227067. 067.
Hey, hey!
Hey!
Perfect. We did not plan this.
Good thing we didn't do alcohol tonight. We'd have been in trouble. All right, so for that gas grill, this is
the big one.
This is the big one.
This is the big one. Barbecue goes to 227080. 227080. We're going to barbecue.
Going once. Going twice. It's old American. Go for another
Really?
one.
All right.
That's why you never leave.
Never, never leave. Okay, barbecue now goes to 227044.
044.
044.
Hey!
Hey!
I would just like to say that you couldn't get a better guy. And it's not because I just won the gas.
Yeah. Here you go, Creed.
You
Here you go.
cannot get a better guy than that guy.
Thank you all, folks. Appreciate it. Any questions, come on up.